What you see here is the template for the assessment report. This will help you to organize your data and findings. You want to replace this with your program name. You want to replace this with the degree that you plan on assessing, or if it's a certificate of achievement, you would write COA. Here, you will replace this with the academic year, such as 2012-13. The assessment report is the document you create that is used to report the findings that emerge when you look at your assessment data. It is conceivable that you won't have any data from which to craft a report. In those situations, the assessment report details why there is no data, such as the rubric is currently under development, or faculty are currently working on determining the best class in which the measure should be administered. Maybe your advisory committee hasn't given you the feedback you need to implement the measure. Whether or not data is available, however, the outcomes should be listed in the report as they provide the context for which the measures were used. Here is a layout of the outcomes. Just like the assessment plan, if you have a STEM, you would put the STEM here, and then you would put the remaining portion of the outcome in each numbered list. After you list the outcomes, then there should be a short description of the measures of learning and how they relate to the outcomes. Any direct measure of learning should be noted here. If it was a standardized test, give a short description of what that test is. Did the faculty create this standardized test, or did you use it from elsewhere? If it was a measure with an accompanying rubric, such as a project or a lab, then the measure should be noted, but the accompanying rubric should be placed at the end of the report. There should be a description of where the measures were implemented, such as the direct measures of learning were administered in the capstone course CIT 295. If indirect measures were used, a short description should be included here as well, such as the indirect measure of learning was a student satisfaction survey which sought to glean information about the students' satisfaction as well as their belief that the program improved the skills targeted by the program. After you've filled out the measures of learning, then you want to go to the data findings. The data findings section is where you report the data. You want to organize this by outcome. You know how many students took the assessment and how many passed. You also know if the passing score was marginal or not. Give an aggregate description of the data, or if you wish, you can detail the scores. And what I mean by an aggregate description is the average score of the 23 students, or the total score of the 23 students. What was the maximum score? What was the minimum score? Some kind of a description that might help you to be able to analyze the data findings. It is possible that the data findings will make no sense. If that's the case, then that's what you want to record. Here, under outcome number 1, which I did not actually write the outcome because I don't have one to write, I put down 23 students in the capstone course blah 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 were assessed using such and such project graded on a rubric, as well as taking a standardized test. 18 students passed the project assessment, 19 students passed the standardized test. Under outcome number 2, I put down 23 students in the capstone course blah 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 were assessed using such and such project graded on a rubric. 22 students passed with a score of 78 or more. This is an aggregate report. On outcome number 3, you can put down, or I put down 23 students in the capstone course were assessed using a standardized test. 20 students passed with a score of 82% or more. Again, I'm using an aggregate score here. And then finally, I gave an example of what happens if the data is all over the place. 23 students in the capstone course were assessed using measure such and such. Scores were all over the place and made no sense. After you have recorded that information, then you want to record the data implications. That is, what is the data telling you? You can write something like, scores on the measures for outcome 1 suggest that the projects need to be revisited to make sure they include material that will address the shortfall indicated by the data. If you are not satisfied with student performance, then brainstorm the reason for the shortfall and include it in the report. In the case where the data is all over the place, the problem might be in the outcome. That is, it wasn't crafted very well. Or the problem could be in the measure, or even in the rubric design. See if you can reason out where the problem lies and report it. After you've completed the data implication section, then you want to come up with your planned action. This next section has to do with your response to the data implications. If there is a shortfall, what is the action plan that you're going to implement to address the problem? It's possible that you could be satisfied that everything is just fine, that the data supports the notion that everything is working great. Then report that. In the case where the implication is that the outcome, the measure, or the rubric is malformed, then you want to detail an action plan for addressing any one or all of these issues. Everything that you do in this report should be organized by outcome. Finally, you will place your rubrics at the end of the document. I have heard several people say that it is impractical to place my rubric in the report because it is far too big. If that is the case, then you may actually not have a program rubric. A true program rubric is a single rubric that uses the outcome as the measure. You may actually be using a checklist, and if you are using a checklist, it is possible to boil that checklist down so that it addresses a single outcome, or maybe two outcomes. I placed some examples of rubrics on the primer, okay? So if you go to dbroderson.com/primer, which I will do right now, there's dbroderson.com/primer, and if we come down here to where it says checklists, expanded checklists, and rubrics, we can find out what the definition of a rubric is, and we can work through all the different kinds of rubrics that are available. But the ones that we're really interested in are the program rubrics. So I'm going to scroll down and find the program rubrics. Program rubrics. Okay, so how can rubrics be used to assess program learning outcomes? All of that is here. Now mind you, every single one of these rubrics that's listed was taken from literature, okay, and I've cited the literature, so you know that this isn't coming from me. This is a standard that's out there. This is what other people are using and successfully using, okay? Here is a generic rubric for assessing program outcomes in a capstone course. Program outcome number 1 is what you would put here. You would describe in this box what is unacceptable, what is marginal, what is acceptable, and what is acceptable and what is exceptional, okay? You may also work with just a 3-column rubric if you want to, such as unacceptable, acceptable, and exceptional. Here is a generic rubric for assessing program outcomes that span multiple courses. You would have program outcome number 1 and the course number where it's being measured. If program outcome number 1 is being measured in 2 different courses, then you would want to include 2 lines that describe those 2 courses. Okay, so this would be course number 1, program outcome number 1. Here we would have program outcome number 1, course number 2. Okay, and again, under unacceptable, you would describe what is unacceptable, what is marginal, what is acceptable, and what is exceptional. And then of course you would record your scores over here and then tally them all up. Hopefully this makes sense. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and contact me, or you can contact your respective assessment helper that you have in your department.